"Take off that ridiculous hat, old woman. You are an embarrassment to this house." The young woman's laughter rang out across the marble hall, and the two of them, mother and daughter, smiled at each other, as if they owned the very floor beneath their feet. So the old cleaning woman slowly set down her mop. She reached up with two tired hands, and she removed her hat. And every servant in that grand estate went utterly still, because the face beneath that hat belonged to the one woman who owned everything they were standing on, every wall, every window, every acre of it. Stay with me until the very end of this story, because before that hat came off, two women had already gambled everything on the belief that a poor black cleaning woman was nobody worth watching. It was the most expensive mistake either of them would ever make. There is an old truth that my grandmother used to tell me on the porch when I was a girl, and I have carried it every day of my long life. She would say, "Child, the powerful never learn the truth, because the truth hides itself from anyone who can punish it." I did not understand her when I was small. I understand her now, and so did the woman in this story. I have been telling stories for the better part of my life, to anyone who would sit still long enough to listen, and of all the stories I know, this one has stayed closest to my heart, because it is not really a story about a mansion, or a fortune, or a scheme uncovered. It is a story about what a person is worth, and about how the ones too proud to look closely almost always miss it entirely. Her name was Odessa Marsh. By the time our story begins, Odessa was one of the wealthiest women in the state of New York. She owned a company called Marsh Holdings, hotels, buildings, land stretching from the harbor of the city out to the quiet green hills where her great white estate stood above the water. Her name was printed on the sides of buildings that touched the clouds, and yet, on the morning our story opens, Odessa Marsh stood in the back office of that estate, dressed not in silk, but in a plain gray dress, a worn apron, and a soft cloth hat pulled low over her silver hair. Beside her stood the one man in the world she trusted completely, Corwin Reed, her lawyer and her friend of 30 years. "Are you certain about this, Odessa?" Corwin asked. His voice was low. "I have to be certain about something," she answered. "And I can't be certain of anything while I'm Odessa Marsh. If something is wrong in this house, the truth will run and hide the moment I walk in as the owner. One word from me, and everyone straightens their backs and tells me exactly what they think I want to hear." She smoothed the front of her plain apron. But nobody hides from a cleaning woman. Nobody watches their words in front of the help. If I want to see the true heart of this house, I have to become invisible again. Corwin studied her for a long moment. "And who, exactly, will you become?" "Pearl," she said simply. "Just Pearl. An old woman looking for honest work. No one will look at her twice." "You built an empire, Odessa," Corwin said gently. "You don't have to pick up a mop to prove anything." Odessa gave him a small, tired smile, the kind of smile that carries a whole life inside it. "Corwin," she said, "before there was ever a Marsh Holdings, before there was a single dollar to my name, I was a girl of 16, cleaning other people's floors on my knees. My hands remember. They have never forgotten." She reached for the broom leaning against the wall and took it in her grip, as naturally as breathing. "Starting today, inside these gates, there is no Odessa Marsh. There is only old Pearl. I want you to hear the courage in that. Most people, once they climb out of a hard life, never want to touch it again. They lock the memory away and pray it never comes knocking. But Odessa Marsh was willing to put on the very hardship she had escaped, to feel small again, to be looked down upon again, because she loved her home and her son more than she loved her own dignity. And that, as we will see, made all the difference. Odessa had been away from the estate for nearly 2 years. There had been a season of illness, nothing she spoke of to many people, and a long recovery, and the endless work of the company that could not run itself. During all that time, the great house on the hill had been left in the hands of the woman who managed it, the head housekeeper, Vivian Cole. Vivian had come highly recommended. She was tall and elegant, with a cool voice and a colder eye, and she had run the estate with what everyone called great efficiency. Odessa had trusted her. She had been grateful, in truth, grateful that while she was weak, someone strong was keeping her home from falling into neglect. But something had begun to feel wrong. The letters from the estate had grown strange. The staff who had worked there for years, good people, loyal people, had begun to leave, one after another, and no one could quite explain why. The accountants had flagged expenses that did not add up, and Odessa's son, Marcus, the light of her life, had fallen in love with a young woman she had never truly met. A young woman named Lauren Cole, Vivian's daughter. So Odessa came home, but she came home quietly, through the servant's door, as Pearl. The moment she stepped inside, she felt it. The house that had once hummed with warmth now held its breath. The staff moved fast and spoke little, their eyes down, their shoulders tight. It was not the house she remembered. It was a house that had learned to be afraid. She had barely set her small bag down in the servants' quarters when a sharp voice cut across the corridor. Are you the new cleaning woman?" Odessa turned. A tall woman in a fine dark blouse stood looking down at her. Vivian Cole herself, though of course Vivian had no idea who she was looking at. "Yes, ma'am," Odessa said softly. Vivian's eyes traveled over her, slow and dismissive, from the worn hat to the tired shoes. "You're old," she said flatly. "Yes, ma'am." "Can you even still work at your age?" "I'll do my best, ma'am." "Best?" Vivian let the word fall like something distasteful. Your best had better be enough. There is no room in this estate for lazy people, and I have no patience for them at all. You will rise at 5. You will clean the garden, the driveway, and the whole of the back grounds. When I give you an order, you will do it at once, and you will not answer back. Do you understand me?" "Yes, ma'am." "Good." Vivian turned on her heel. "The garden is a disgrace. Go and start there. And do try not to be as useless as you look." Odessa took her broom and walked out into the cold morning air, and she said nothing at all. But I will tell you what she was thinking, because she told Corwin later, and I have never forgotten it. She said that as she stood there being spoken to like she was less than the dust on the floor, she was not angry, not yet. She was carried backward, 60 years, to a hot kitchen in a house where she had once scrubbed pots as a girl, while a woman she barely remembered stood over her and said those same cruel words in that same cold voice. Useless, old, lazy. Do try not to be as useless as you look. Some wounds, she realized, never truly close. They only wait, quietly, for the day someone reopens them. And there was a bitter kind of wonder in it, too. She had spent 60 years and a lifetime of labor climbing out of that hot kitchen, dollar by dollar, brick by brick, until her name stood on the tallest buildings a person could point to. And a single scornful sentence from Vivian Cole had reached down through all of it and set her right back on that kitchen floor, a girl again, small again. That is the terrible power of contempt. It does not care what you have built. It only wants you to forget it. But Odessa Marsh did not forget. She let the old ache come, and she let it pass, and beneath it she felt the bedrock of everything she was, unmoved and unmovable. Let them think her nothing. She knew exactly what she was. And so old Pearl bent to her work in the garden, and she began, very patiently, to listen. The days that followed were long, and they were hard. Odessa rose before the sun. She swept the endless driveway, raked the leaves that never stopped falling, cleaned the wide stone veranda until it shone, and all the while, Vivian Cole found her wherever she went. "You call this clean?" Vivian would say, standing in a doorway. "I don't see that you've done anything at all." "I'm cleaning the driveway now, ma'am," Odessa would answer. "It's a very large driveway." "Excuses. That's all your kind ever offers me." "Excuses," Vivian would sniff. "Do it again, and this time, do it properly." "Yes, ma'am." Not once did Odessa raise her voice. Not once did she let her back straighten in pride. She swept, and she raked, and she listened, and she waited. Because she had learned something in her long climb up from nothing that the Vivian Coles of the world never learn. That silence is not weakness. Sometimes silence is a woman counting every single word you say and writing it down in a place you cannot reach. But not everyone in that house was cruel. On her third morning, Odessa was scrubbing the stone steps when a young woman knelt down beside her with a second brush and began, without a word, to help. Her name was Ruth. She had worked at the estate for 5 years, and she had one of those open, kind faces that make a hard world feel a little softer. "You don't have to do that," Odessa said, surprised. "I know," Ruth said, smiling, "but it goes faster with two. And besides, nobody should have to do all this alone." They worked side by side in the morning light, and slowly Ruth began to talk, the way people do when they finally find someone who will listen. "It wasn't always like this here," Ruth said quietly. 5 years I've been here. When Mrs. Marsh was around, this was the happiest house you ever saw. She knew all our names. She knew about our families. She used to say a house is only as good as the people who keep it, and she treated us that way." Ruth glanced over her shoulder before she went on. "But these last 2 years, since Ms. Cole took over the running of it, everything changed. All these new rules, no talking while you work, no resting, no answering back. And if you break even one of them, well," Ruth's voice dropped to a whisper. "She calls it defying her, and then you're gone." Odessa kept her eyes on the stone. "And where has Mrs. Marsh been all this time? Away. Sick, they say, and then busy with the company. Poor thing." Ruth shook her head. "I do hope she comes home soon. I don't think she has any idea what her house has become. I want you to sit with the grace of that young woman for a moment." Ruth had no idea that the tired old cleaning woman, kneeling beside her, was the very Mrs. Marsh she was praying would come home. She was kind to Pearl for no reason at all, except that kindness was simply who she was. And I have lived long enough to tell you this with certainty. The people who are gentle to those who can do nothing for them are the rarest treasure this world has to offer. Odessa saw it, she marked it, and she never forgot it. That night, alone in the narrow servants' room, Odessa sat on the edge of a hard little bed and thought of her husband, Samuel, gone these many years now, and of her son, Marcus, whom she had raised alone through every lean and lonely season. She had built an empire so that her boy would never have to kneel on cold stone the way she once had. And now, somehow, that same boy was about to marry into a family that made her kneel on cold stone in her own home. She let herself remember, just for a little while, the road that had brought her here, the road she almost never let herself walk anymore. She remembered being a girl of 16, cleaning houses she could never dream of living in, being called by the wrong name because the woman of the house couldn't be bothered to learn the right one. She remembered marrying Samuel when they had nothing but 2 pairs of working hands and a shared stubbornness to build something better. She remembered the long nights after he passed, when Marcus was small and money was thin, and the whole world seemed to be waiting for her to fail. And she remembered the promise she had made over her husband's memory, that their son would never, ever be made to feel small. She had kept that promise. She had built towers with her name on them, and yet here she sat, in a servant's cot, in her own house, being made to feel small all over again, and worse, watching it reach toward her boy. It struck her then that money had bought her a great many things, but it had never once bought her the one thing she wanted most, which was simply to be seen. Vivian Cole had looked straight at her a dozen times and never once seen a human being at all. The thought settled over her like a shadow. Whatever was happening in this house, it reached all the way to her son, and she made herself a quiet promise there in the dark. She would not remove her hat. She would not speak her name until she knew the whole and complete truth. She did not have to wait long to meet the young woman her son loved. A few mornings later, a sleek black car rolled up the long drive, and out of it stepped Lauren Cole. She was beautiful. Odessa would not pretend otherwise. Young and polished and dressed in clothes that cost more than most of the staff earned in a season. And the moment she arrived, the whole house shifted around her, the way a room shifts around someone who has learned to expect the world to bend. Vivian rushed out to greet her, and something remarkable happened to the cold housekeeper's face. It softened, it warmed, it came alive. Odessa watched from the edge of the garden, leaning on her rake, and she understood at once that whatever else was true in this house, the bond between these two women was the realest thing in it. "You're here so early, darling," Vivian said. "I wanted to look around the estate a little," Lauren answered, her eyes moving over the grand front of the house the way a buyer's eyes move over a thing she intends to purchase. "It's all coming along beautifully, Mother." Then her gaze fell on Odessa. "Who is that?" "Oh, no one." Vivian said. Just the new cleaning woman. Old, slow. Don't trouble yourself with her. She raised her voice. You there. Hurry along with your work. Miss Lauren doesn't need you underfoot. Lauren looked at Odessa the way you might look at a piece of old furniture you were deciding whether to keep or throw away. Then she turned back to her mother, and the two of them walked into the house together, arm in arm, laughing at something Odessa could not hear. Odessa stood very still in the garden for a long moment. Then she bent, quietly, and went back to raking the leaves. She had come to this house prepared to dislike the woman her son had chosen. Every mother, if she is honest, feels a small pang at the girl who takes her boy's heart. But this was something else entirely. This was a young woman who had looked at a tired old worker and seen absolutely nothing. No soul, no history, no worth. And Odessa knew, with the deep certainty of a mother's heart, that a person who can look at the least among them and see nothing will one day look at everyone that way, including, in time, the man foolish enough to marry her. Inside the house, over a fine new tea set laid out just for her, Lauren settled into the beautiful living room her mother had fixed up for her comfort and asked, "You're certain Marcus is coming home next week?" "Certain," said Vivian. "He has meetings here in the city." "Good," Lauren said, and something in the way she said it made the word sound less like love and more like the closing of a trap. It happened on a gray afternoon, when the house was quiet and most of the staff were resting their 10 allotted minutes. Odessa was polishing the tall windows in the corridor outside the living room, slowly, invisibly, the way she had learned to do everything now, when she heard the two voices through the half-open door, Vivian's and Lauren's, low, confiding, the voices of two people who are certain no one is listening. And Odessa Marsh stood in the shadow of her own hallway, and she listened to the whole thing. "You worry too much," Vivian was saying. "The wedding is nearly here, and once it happens, nothing can stop us." "But what if someone finds out?" Lauren asked. "No one will find out. Trust me. I have been planning this since the day you first started seeing Marcus Marsh." There was a pause, the small clink of a cup on a saucer. "Ever since you were a little girl, I knew you weren't meant for an ordinary life. You were born for better, and when you marry into the Marsh family, everything they have becomes ours. Not all at once, gradually, carefully, so no one ever sees it happening." "How?" Lauren's voice was eager now, almost girlish. "Simple. First, we win the loyalty of everyone who works here. That's already half done. I've been telling them for 2 years that you will be the new mistress of this estate, that the Marshes have abandoned it, and you are the one who truly cares. And they believe me, because I know every one of them, and I know what they fear. When the staff are loyal to you, and not to the Marshes, then when the time comes, there will be no one left to defend this family, no one to raise the alarm, no one to stand in our way." Odessa's grip tightened on her cleaning cloth, but she did not move. She barely allowed herself to breathe. "And the money?" Lauren asked. "That's the beautiful part," Vivian said, and Odessa could hear the smile in it. "The estate's accounts run through me. Every expense, every renovation, we simply record certain sums as improvements to the house, and then we move that money, quietly, into a company of our own. By the time you're married, we'll have the funds we need. The estate will pay for the very business we'll use to take control of all the rest." "You're so clever, Mother," Lauren breathed. "I've had a long time to think about it, darling. When you're Marcus's wife, his decisions become yours to guide. And once we have our own foothold inside Marsh Holdings, well," Vivian's voice went soft and certain, "then it isn't just this house we take. It's everything. I have told a great many stories in my time, and I have learned that evil rarely announces itself with thunder. More often it whispers, over a fine cup of tea, in a beautiful room, between two people who love each other. That is what made it so terrible. There was real love between that mother and daughter, and they had bent even that good thing to a wicked purpose." Odessa understood, in that hallway, that she was not fighting monsters. She was fighting something far more dangerous. She was fighting ordinary greed, dressed in silk, smiling over the good china. That evening, Odessa met Corwin in secret at the far end of the garden, past the reach of any window. "It's real," she told him, her voice steady, but her hands unsteady. "It's not a suspicion anymore, Corwin. I heard it with my own ears. They mean to take the house, and then the company, and my son is the door they plan to walk through." Corwin's face went grave. "Then we need more than what you heard. We need proof that will hold. Recordings. The accounts." "Then that," said Odessa, "is what we will get." Marcus Marsh came home the following week. Odessa was sweeping the front steps when his car came through the gate, and she had to steady herself against the stone rail. It had been so long, nearly 2 years, since she had seen her boy's face up close. He stepped out tall and handsome, so like his father it made her chest ache, and the whole staff hurried to line up and welcome him. And Lauren ran to him and threw her arms around his neck, and Marcus held her and laughed, and said, "I missed you so much." And Odessa stood there among the servants, in her plain gray dress and her worn hat, and watched her only son embrace the woman who was plotting to destroy him. No one so much as glanced at old Pearl. I want you to imagine that moment, if you can, to stand a few feet from your own child, your only child, and to watch him be happy, be trusting, be fooled, and to be unable to run to him, unable to warn him, unable even to speak your own name. Odessa later said it was the hardest thing she had ever done in a life that had known a great deal of hardship. To love someone that much, and to have to stay silent, and to keep sweeping the steps. There was a moment, she confessed to me once, when she nearly gave it all up. When Marcus passed by her on those steps, so close she could have touched his sleeve, and looked right through the old cleaning woman without the faintest flicker of recognition. Her own son, who she had rocked to sleep 1,000 nights, who she had gone hungry to feed in the lean years, did not know his own mother's eyes beneath that hat. It nearly broke her. Every cell in her body cried out to drop the broom and take his face in her hands. But she held still, because a mother's love, the deepest kind, is not only the love that runs toward the child. Sometimes it is the harder love, the love that waits, and endures, and protects from the shadows, so that the child can be truly safe. She had learned that kind of love a long time ago. She called upon it now. But she did, because she knew that if she spoke too soon, if she cried out, "Marcus, it's me, they're deceiving you," with nothing but her word against theirs, they would call her a mad old woman, or a liar, or worse. Lauren had her son's heart. Vivian had the staff's loyalty, and a truth without proof, Odessa knew, is a truth that can be laughed out of the room. And so she waited, and she watched, and she worked. Over the next several days, while the house busied itself with talk of the coming wedding, Odessa and Corwin quietly did the harder work beneath the surface. A small recording device found its way into the beautiful living room, tucked out of sight, where the two women so often talked. Copies of the estate's accounts, which Corwin was legally entitled to request, began to arrive at his office, and page by page, the picture came clear. The renovations Vivian had been billing to the estate did not match the house. Money marked for new equipment, new gardens, new repairs, was flowing out, and much of it was not flowing back into the estate at all. It was flowing into a company Odessa had never heard of. And that money, once it landed, seemed to vanish behind a wall she could not yet see through. "There's something more here, Odessa," Corwin told her one night, spreading the pages across a table. "This isn't just skimming from the household budget. This is organized. This has a plan behind it. And I don't think Vivian Cole is clever enough to have built it alone." Odessa looked at the numbers for a long time. "No," she said quietly. "I don't think she is either. Someone is helping them. Someone with reach." She folded her tired hands. "The day is coming, Corwin. The day of truth. I can feel it." It came, as these things so often do, on an ordinary afternoon. Odessa was cleaning the wide entrance hall when Vivian swept in, and this time there was something restless and sharp in her, something looking for a place to land. She had grown bolder in the days since Marcus's return, more certain of her victory, and a person certain of victory often grows careless with cruelty. "You," Vivian said, pointing at the floor. "What is this? Do you not even know how to clean a simple floor?" "I'm cleaning it now, ma'am," Odessa said. "Cleaning? You call this cleaning?" Vivian's voice rose, and the other servants, hearing it, went still along the edges of the room. "You have been here for weeks, and you are still useless. Look at you. A worn-out old woman with a mop. You have no place in a house like this. You never did. I'll do better, ma'am, Odessa said quietly. Better. Vivian gave a short, cold laugh. Trying is not enough here. It has never been enough. She gestured to the gathered staff, raising her voice so they would all be sure to hear. And let this be a lesson to every one of you. This is what becomes of the lazy and the useless in my house. Now clean it again. On your knees if you have to. And be quick about it. And Odessa Marsh, who owned that hall, and the house it stood in, and the very ground it rested upon, lowered herself down onto her knees on the cold marble, and began, slowly, to clean the floor again. I will not dress that moment up for you. It was a hard thing to bear, and it was meant to be. But here is what I want you to understand about the woman on that floor. She was not humiliated, not in her own heart. A person can only be humiliated when they believe, somewhere inside, that the cruel words might be true. And Odessa Marsh knew exactly who she was. She knew what her hands had built. She knew what her heart was worth. So while her knees were on that cold stone, her spirit was standing tall as any tower she had ever raised in that city. Vivian Cole thought she was breaking an old woman. She was, in truth, kneeling beside a queen, and mistaking her for a servant. When Vivian had gone, young Ruth crept over and knelt down and helped Odessa to her feet, her own eyes wet. Don't you listen to a word of it, Miss Pearl, Ruth whispered fiercely. Not one word. You're worth 10 of her. You're worth 100. Odessa looked at that kind young woman for a long moment, and something moved in her weathered face. Thank you, child, she said softly. You have a good heart. Don't ever let anyone in this world talk you out of it. She patted Ruth's hand. It's going to be all right. You'll see. Sooner than you think. Ruth did not understand what she meant, but she would. Very soon, she would. That night, Odessa did something she had not done in a very long time. She wept. Not out of shame. She had told herself the truth too many times to believe Vivian's cruelty. She wept because kneeling on that cold marble had opened a door she had kept locked for 60 years, and behind it stood the frightened girl she used to be, the girl who cleaned other people's homes and swallowed other people's insults, and prayed for a day when no one could look through her like she was made of glass. She had spent her whole life running from that girl, and here, in the finest house she had ever owned, that girl had caught up to her at last. But when the tears were spent, something quieter took their place, because she realized that the frightened girl and the powerful woman were the same person, that she had never left one behind to become the other. And there was a strange strength in that. She had survived being nothing once. She could survive being treated as nothing again, for exactly as long as it took to set things right. The cruelty could not reach the part of her that mattered. It never had. It never would. 2 days later, Vivian Cole called every servant in the estate together in the great hall. Odessa stood among them, at the back, in her gray dress and her low hat, one more tired face in the crowd. Corwin stood quietly near the door, and in her apron pocket, Odessa's hand rested gently on a small device, the one that held the truth. Vivian stepped up before them all, tall and commanding.
I've called you here, she began, because there is an important matter we must speak of.
You all know that Marcus Marsh and my Lauren are to be married soon, but I want you to consider, truly consider, whether that wedding is the right thing at all. A murmur ran through the staff. There are things you do not know, Vivian went on, her voice smooth and sure. The Marsh family is not what you imagine. For 2 years they have cared nothing for this house. 2 years, and the owner scarcely set foot here. If it were not for me, if it were not for the devotion of my daughter Lauren, who has given this estate her heart, this beautiful home would have rotted from neglect long ago. Lauren is the one who cares for this place. Lauren is the one who deserves it. So I say to you plainly, this estate does not need an absent family that has forgotten it. It needs someone who is truly here, someone loyal, and that someone is my daughter. She let her words settle over the frightened, uncertain faces. So when the time comes, Vivian finished, you will remember who kept this house alive. You will remember whose side you are on. For a moment, the great hall was silent, and then, from the back of the room, an old and steady voice said one word. No. Every head turned. Vivian's eyes narrowed, searching the crowd. Who said that? Who dares? Her gaze landed on the old cleaning woman in the gray dress. You. Get back to your work, old woman, before I throw you out of this house myself. But the old cleaning woman did not move. She only lifted her chin, and when she spoke again, her voice filled the whole hall, and it did not tremble at all. I have been listening, said Odessa Marsh, for a very long time. I have heard every whispered word inside these walls, and I think it is time, at last, that you learned who you have been speaking to. What is the meaning of this? Vivian snapped. Someone remove this madwoman at once. But no one moved, because there was something in the old woman's bearing now, something that had not been there a moment before, that rooted every person in that hall to the floor. Odessa Marsh reached up with two steady hands, and slowly, she removed her hat. She let it fall to the floor. She straightened her back, the back that had bent for weeks, and she stood to her full height, and the tired stoop of old Pearl simply melted away. And there, before the astonished eyes of every soul in that great hall, stood not a cleaning woman at all, but a woman of unmistakable command, the woman whose portrait hung in the very library down the corridor. It is a strange thing to watch a person change without changing at all. She had not put on finer clothes. She had not spoken a magic word. She had only stopped pretending to be less than she was, and in that instant, everyone in the room saw her clearly for the first time. It was the same face they had looked past for weeks, the same tired hands, the same silver hair, and yet not one of them had truly seen her, because they had all been told she was nobody. And it is astonishing how blind a person can become once they have decided someone does not matter. The whisper went through the room like wind through wheat. It's her. It's Mrs. Marsh. It's the owner. Vivian Cole's face went the color of ash. That's impossible, she breathed. My name, said Odessa, is Odessa Marsh. I own this estate. I own the ground you are standing on, and the roof over your head, and the fine tea set you laid out for your daughter. And I have spent these last weeks on my knees on my own floors, so that I could hear, with my own ears, exactly what has been happening in my home. She turned her gaze slowly across the room. I am sorry that I had to deceive all of you, but there was no other way to learn the truth from the people I once believed I could trust. She reached into her apron pocket and drew out the small recorder, and she set it down on the table where everyone could see it. And for anyone who still doubts me, she said, listen. She pressed a button, and into the silence of that hall came Vivian Cole's own voice, clear and unmistakable. When you marry into the Marsh family, everything they have becomes ours. We simply record certain sums as improvements to the house, and then we move that money, quietly, into a company of our own. It isn't just this house we take, it's everything. Odessa pressed the button again, and the voice fell silent. No one in that hall breathed. I trusted you, Vivian, Odessa said, and now, at last, there was a deep sorrow in her voice. I was unwell. I was frightened for my life, and I handed you my home to care for, because I believed you were a good woman. Instead, you used my house, my money, my loyal people, and worst of all, you used my son, to build a scheme to take everything I have spent my whole life building. She shook her head slowly. Do you have any idea what it cost me to build this? What I gave up? What I survived? And you thought you would simply take it, over cups of tea. It was at that exact moment that the doors at the end of the hall opened, and Marcus Marsh walked in. He stopped short, staring at the impossible sight before him. His mother, whom he believed to be resting in the city, standing in a servant's dress in the middle of the great hall. Mother, he said, is that really you? What is happening here? Marcus, Odessa said gently. My son, come here, there is something you need to hear. And she played the recording again, from the beginning, and Marcus Marsh listened to the voice of the woman he loved, for Lauren's voice was there too, eager and cold, plotting, laughing, planning the ruin of his family. And Odessa watched her son's heart break in real time, and there was nothing she could do but stand beside him while it did. When it was over, Marcus turned to Lauren, and his face was very pale. How long? He asked quietly. How long have you been deceiving me? Marcus, Lauren said quickly, reaching for him. It isn't what you think. It's on the recording, Lauren, your own voice. He stepped back from her hand. I trusted you. I was going to give you my whole life, and you were only ever planning how to take it. Marcus, I love you, Lauren began. No, he said, and his voice was steady now. If you had loved me, you would never have used me as a door to walk through. Odessa turned then to Vivian Cole, and her voice rang out clear and final across the hall. Vivian Cole, as of this moment, you no longer hold any position in this house. You cannot fire me, Vivian said, but the certainty had drained out of her. Cannot I? Odessa answered. I ran this house before you ever set foot in it, and I will run it long after you are gone. You had 2 years inside my walls, and you used every one of those days to steal from me. That is not devotion, Vivian. That is not caring for my home. That is theft. Now gather your things, both of you, and leave, today. And the 2 women who had walked those halls as if they owned them, who had mocked an old cleaning woman and mistaken her for nothing, walked out of the great front door with their heads down, past the very staff they had tried to turn, and not one person raised a hand to stop them going. You might think the story ends there, with the villains turned out into the cold, but the truth Odessa had uncovered ran deeper than even she had guessed. That evening, in the study, Corwin came to her with a grave face and a folder in his hand. Odessa, he said. The money. It didn't stop at Lauren's company. I traced it further. He set the pages down. Those transactions from the estate. Someone inside Marsh Holdings itself approved them. Someone with authority. Someone in the company you trusted. Odessa felt the cold of it settle over her. Who? His name is on the records. His digital signature is on every one of them. Corwin paused. It's Dorian Locke. Dorian? Marcus, who was sitting nearby, rose to his feet in shock. That's, Mother, that's one of our senior executives. That can't be right. It's right, Corwin said quietly. They didn't only want the estate. The estate was just the beginning, the source of the funds. Their real target was the whole of Marsh Holdings, Vivian and Lauren on the outside, and Dorian Locke on the inside. If Lauren had married Marcus, she'd have had a foot inside the family. And with Locke approving things from within the company, they could have moved, slowly and quietly, to seize control of everything. Everything you built, Odessa. For a long moment, no one spoke. I didn't see it, Marcus finally said, his voice thick. I introduced Lauren to our partners. I brought her into the company's world. I trusted her completely, and I never saw a single thing. Odessa crossed the room and took her son's face in her 2 hands, the same hands that had once scrubbed floors, the same hands that had built an empire, the same hands that had raised him alone. Listen to me, she said. It is not a sin to trust, Marcus. It is a grace. The sin belongs entirely to the ones who took that trust and made a weapon of it. You were not foolish. You were loving. And there is nothing in this world I am prouder of than that. She turned to Corwin. Begin the legal action against Dorian Locke tomorrow morning. All of it. Every record, every signature, every dollar. We will do this properly, through the law, in the light of day. It will be done, said Corwin. And it was. In the weeks that followed, the truth came fully into the light, the way truth eventually always does. Dorian Locke was removed and answered for what he had done. The stolen funds were traced and recovered, and the beautiful house on the hill, slowly, gently, became itself again. Odessa Marsh took off the plain gray dress for the last time, but she never forgot the woman who had worn it. She called the whole of her staff together once more, and this time, there was no fear in that hall, only a kind of wondering hope. She thanked them. She raised the wages of everyone who had stayed loyal through the hard years. And she found young Ruth, the girl who had knelt beside old Pearl on the cold stone and helped her with no reason to expect anything in return. You did not know who I was, Odessa told her. You were kind to me when I was nothing to you, when I could do nothing for you. That is the rarest thing there is, child, and it will not go unrewarded, not in this house. She made Ruth the new keeper of the estate, the very position Vivian Cole had used for theft, now placed in the hands of the one person who had shown a good heart when no one was watching. As for Marcus, he grieved for a time, the way anyone must when they learn that a love was never real. But he was young, and he was good, and his mother was beside him, and in time his heart mended stronger than before. One quiet evening, on the veranda where the whole story had unfolded, he took his mother's hand. "Thank you, Mother," he said. "For what?" "For coming home the way you did. If you hadn't, if you'd walked in as yourself, they'd have hidden it all, and I would have married her, and by now, none of this would still be ours." He shook his head slowly. "That old cleaning woman saved me from the greatest deception of my life, and she was you all along." Odessa smiled and looked out over the garden she had once swept on her knees, now golden in the evening light. "My son," she said, "let me leave you with the one thing this whole long trial taught me. Remember it always." She squeezed his hand. "The powerful rarely learn the truth, because the truth hides from anyone strong enough to punish it. The only way I ever saw the real hearts of the people around me was to set my power down, to become small, to become invisible, to let them believe I was nothing. And only then did they show me exactly who they were." She turned to him, and her eyes were shining. "Never measure a soul by the hat on their head, or the dress on their back, Marcus. Never look at a tired old woman with a broom, or anyone the world has decided is beneath notice, and imagine you are seeing all there is. Because the day you learn to look down on the least among you is the day you go blind to the truth." Those two women looked at me and saw nothing, and that blindness cost them everything. And so the great house on the hill was warm again, and its people were happy again, and the woman who had built it from nothing walked its halls with her head held high, a woman who had knelt on her own cold floors, endured every cruelty in silence, and risen, at the last, to take back all that was hers. Some evenings, I am told, Odessa Marsh would still take that plain gray dress out of the closet where she kept it, and hold it a while, and remember, not to punish herself with the memory, but to keep herself honest. She kept it as some people keep an old photograph or a lock of a child's hair, a reminder of who she had been, and of how thin the line is between the one who gives orders and the one who scrubs the floor. She never again passed a tired worker in one of her hotels without stopping to learn their name. She never again looked at a person the world had decided was invisible and let them stay invisible in her eyes. That, she said, was the true fortune she carried out of that hard season. Not the money she saved, not the company she kept, but the way it changed how she saw. Because in the end, the ones who mocked her had forgotten the oldest truth of all. It is not the loudest, nor the richest, nor the proudest who see clearly in this world. It is the ones humble enough to kneel and quietly count every word. And if you are listening tonight, and the world has ever looked straight through you as though you were nothing, as though your years or your work or your quiet dignity meant nothing at all, I want you to remember old Pearl on her knees on that cold marble floor. Remember that the ones doing the looking are not seeing the truth of you. They are only showing you the smallness of themselves. Your worth was never theirs to measure. It never will be. And one day, in one way or another, the hat always comes off.